Hai voglia di guardarti questo film? Ed è interessante anche perché veramente c'è una casualità nelle foto di Diltz, ma anche degli altri fotografi della mostra. Nessuno di questi fotografi costruisce l'immagine. Noi siamo abituati a grandi set, immagini patinate, ormai abbiamo anche negli occhi videoclip, una cultura di totale ridicola confezione con cui vendere un prodotto. Gli artisti di cui abbiamo parlato, che avete visto prima nel filmato di Massa, sono artisti che non avevano bisogno di vendere nulla, cioè la musica già era sufficiente, e c'erano fotografi che vivevano in simbiosi con questi musicisti, erano fotografi coetanei, spesso erano amici, fare foto era quasi un corollario dello stare insieme, tutto funzionava molto casualmente e questa è una cosa che poi si è persa, è diventato tutto molto spettacolo, molto sensazionalistico, e sentire come è nata la copertina di Morrison Hotel veramente sembra di tornare a un punto zero, se vogliamo, del linguaggio fotografico, la fotografia di musica.
Well, in the early 1960s, I was in a folk group called the Modern Folk Quartet, and we played a lot of the clubs around Hollywood and LA. And the Doors were one of the bands that we sometimes played with, especially at the Whiskey a Go-Go. And then in '64, when the Beatles played at Sullivan, all folk groups went electric, because they all said, wow, we want that kind of a joyful sound, what are we singing dreary folk songs for? So we went electric, and the Byrds and the Buffalo Springfield and many of those groups also went electric. And so I would see Jim singing in the Whiskey a Go-Go, and they weren't one of my favorite bands, because I came from the folk era, and so I liked the Buffalo Springfield and the Byrds because they were guitar-based. Whereas the Doors were kind of the electric piano based more, and it kind of, it's that sort of that thing, I didn't feel it beat that much. And Jim was kind of sort of shy performer, this is one of the days before he got to be really well known and got a little crazy. So I knew him around town, and I would sometimes just be out shopping and see him with his girlfriend in a clothing store. And the one word that I always used to describe Jim was bemused, because he would have a little smile and kind of nod his head, say, hey, kind of little smile, because he was essentially a poet, and he was an observer type, and he really, he just wanted to watch and see what happened. Jim was really a filmmaker. He started as a filmmaker, where he met with Ray Manzarek in film school. And I know the story that Ray tells is one day he was on the beach, and Jim Morrison came walking down the beach, and Ray said, hey Jim, where have you been? He said, well, I've been here and there, I'm writing poetry. And Ray said, well, let me hear some of it. He started saying, so let me take you to the moon, or something like that. Ray said, my fingers were kind of feeling in the notes, hear the music in his head. And so he said, well, why don't you come over and, stay over at our place, Dorothy and I. We have an extra room, and so they started this band. And Jim was kind of shy about singing, and famously, the first gig that he did, he turned his back to the audience, because he couldn't sing to the audience. And I know partly why that is, for me and to myself. When you rehearse with your friends, you're facing each other. You usually sit and play facing each other. But then when you get on stage, you're standing there, and the audience is there, and your friends are over here, you don't even see them. And it's a little odd, it's a little disorienting. So I'm sure he turned around so he could face the guitar player and the keyboard and the drummer, so he felt the support of his fellow bandmates, But he wasn't like, was in that movie, that Oliver Stone movie, he wasn't a flamboyant type of guy. And he certainly didn't have groupies, We didn't even have groupies. Well, we didn't have a whole bunch of girls at the front of the stage, reaching up, that kind of thing, at all in the folk days. I mean, that's really wasn't really done. I think, well, right, so And they were kind of a quiet band. I mean, you know, they would play their music and stuff, and Jim certainly looked good, and he didn't have a lot of showmanship, you know. But then, so I photographed them in '69. No, I photographed them first in '68 when they were playing in a concert in Long Beach, and then at the Hollywood Bowl. And when I took pictures of them at the Hollywood Bowl, I was the only photographer there squatting in front of the stage shooting. And because there weren't many music photographers at all. Until now, I always say now, can you imagine today if there was a Jim Morrison concert, there'd be 500 photographers trying to fight their way in. And should we hold this one up? Or, well, here, I just said this. Here's a picture of Jim at Hollywood Bowl. And basically, I mean, he didn't run around the stage like Mick Jagger, and he kept mic stand right there. He never picked it up, really. And he sang right into the microphone. The most dramatic thing in this concert was he sang a song about a soldier. And at one point, when the drum was cracked like that, he falls onto the stage like he's going to stop. Like he's a sack of potatoes. He just drops, you know. Is he dead or what? You know, it was very, very dramatic. But otherwise, he was not real exciting on stage, you know. I mean, it was later on when he started taking up a lot of acid, a lot of drugs, and drinking a lot, and that kind of out of hand, you know. It started kind of inciting the audience to riot and got in trouble with the police and all of that. I didn't see that, you know. That was the thing that I knew. Okay, well, here's what happened with the Morrison Hotel. I had a graphic artist partner named Gary Burton, and we had just done Crosby, Stills, Nash cover, sitting on an old couch in front of the house. And it had a nice feel to that, because Gary had told the printers to turn the paper over and print it on the rough side, not the glossy side. And they said, well, we never do that. We always print on the glossy side. I don't care, I want it. And it gave it a sort of a texture. Like, you know, it was kind of like the music. And so everyone liked that cover, and the Doors apparently did too, because they called us up as soon as it came out, and they said, hey, we want you guys to come and do our album cover. So we met them at the Doors office, a little tiny office, and it was just Ray and Jim and Gary and I, and we said, well, do you have a title? They said, no, we don't have a title. I said, well, do you have any ideas? What do you want to have on your cover? No, not really. They didn't have it. Yeah, so we go, well, and then just at that moment, Ray spoke up and said, well, you know, my wife and I were driving downtown LA the other day, and we saw this old hotel. And it said Morrison Hotel. And, wow, you know, that sounds great. Let's go down. So we immediately drove down there and looked at it, and there it was. And I took a few shots of Ray and Jim sitting in the window. And basically it was what you call a transient hotel, or a hotel for like almost vagrants. I mean, it says on the front, rooms $2.50. I hold this up. Yeah. So here it says rooms $2.50. And that was very cheap even in those days. So we went down a couple days later with the whole band, and we walked in, and I told the guy behind the desk, we're just going to be a few minutes, we're going to be over there taking some photos, and, you know, and nobody was there in the lobby, it was empty, and he said, no, you can't. And I said, well, you know, why not? He said, well, you have to get the owner's permission, he's not here, and I'm, oh, God. So we all went outside, and I thought, well, I'll have them stand here on the sidewalk in front of it, because they can't stop us from there. And just as we were there, standing, and I was looking at the window, I saw this light come up here. And I saw that the guy left the desk, got in the elevator, and was gone. So I said, run in there, quick! And we ran in there, and they just got in those positions automatically. Nobody said, you know, a little to the left or anything. And then we took one roll of film, and it was December, because it was right. So we took one roll of film, and then zipped out of there before the guy even came down to the elevator. So then so we took one roll of film, and I started shooting from the side, and because I could get real close that way and shoot them from the side of the window, and my partner Gary said, no, back up, get the whole window, because he already had a graphic idea. So we did that, and then Jim, when we were done, and it came out, Jim said, well, let's go get a drink somewhere. Let's go get a drink. So we got in the drummer's Volkswagen van, we all arrived, and then we went a few blocks away to what they call Skid Row. And Skid Rows were all the winos and the bums were hanging out. And it was all bars and pawn shops. We didn't know which bar to go into because there were so many of them. And then just then, out the windscreen, we saw on the corner Hard Rock Cafe. And we all saw it at the same time, and we said, well, wow, that's where we got to stop and have a beer. And so we got out of the van and went to eat on that cafe. And there it is. Just like it was. And we took a bunch of pictures first of the doors walking around back and forth. And then we went inside. And you can show that inside picture later, right? Okay. No. Yeah. So we went inside the Hard Rock Cafe, and we ordered beer, and so there were a bunch of these old guys in there, and I think Ray started talking to one of them, and then a couple of them came over, and Jim was very interested in hearing them talk about their lives, their hard lives that they lived, and many of them were in worked on ships or something like that, and so he bought beers for a couple of these old guys that were there, and really just listened. We were there for about an hour while these guys talked about their life. That was him being an observer and a poet. It was fascinating. Then we went out on the sidewalk and I took a picture of Jim and all these guys surrounded him. They were like Jim's new best friends, And they had no idea who he was. They never heard of the Doors. I mean, they didn't know anything about music. And by the way, that bar had been there since the 30s. And it had been called the Hard Rock Cafe since the 30s. So it really had nothing to do with rock and roll music. Probably meant mining or between a rock and a hard jazz, something like that. But when the album came out, they put the picture of the Hard Rock Cafe on the back. And as soon as the album came out, the Doors office got a call from London. And the voice on the phone said, would you mind if we use that name? We're starting a cafe here in London. We'd like to call it Hard Rock Cafe. And they said, oh, go right ahead, sure, it's not ours, you do what you want. And that was the beginning of the Hard Rock Cafe empire.
Henry Diltz.